know this breaks all your hearts, but I just don't have one today. I thought, well, I just give you a rest. I see all this sadness on your faces, but you just have to endure it one day. This sermon is going to be kind of different. I've worked on it all week, and that doesn't mean anything really, lots of times. And I've changed it all, and I changed about half of it this morning, and I made another decision as a way up here. So I have no idea what this is going to come out like. I just hope that it works for all of us, including me. Mark 7, 31 through 37. Then he returned from the region of Tyre and went on by the way to Sidon toward the Sea of Galilee in the region of Decapolis. They brought to him a deaf man who had an impediment of his speech, and they begged him to lay his hand on him. He took him aside in private, away from the crowd, and he put his fingers into his ears, and he spat on, touched his tongue. Then he looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, "Be opened." And immediately his ears were opened, his tongue was released, and he spoke plainly. Then Jesus ordered them to tell no one, but the more he ordered them, the more zealously they proclaimed it. They were astounded beyond measure, saying, "He has done everything well. He even makes the deaf to hear and the mute to speak." Do you believe in miracles? That's the story. Joe Hadler had been blind since 6 years old. His blindness was caused by atrophy of the optical nerve. One night, Joe tripped over his dog's leash, which had been left on a step. Subsequently, he fell down the basement stairs. As he fell, his head slammed against the wall, and suddenly, miracle of miracles, his vision restored immediately. All of a sudden, Joe could see things he hadn't seen in years, such as the face of his 5-year-old daughter. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine how this must have made him feel? People kept asking him, "Well, what happened, Joe? What happened?" Joe told him God did it. It was Joe's firm belief that God used the dog leash at the basement stairs and the wall to effect a miracle healing. He gave God complete credit. Joe's experience, his interpretation of that experience, reminds me of something that Dr. Albert Einstein once said. There are two ways to live your life. He said, one is as though nothing is a miracle, and the other is as though everything is a miracle. Now, I wouldn't want to argue with Dr. Einstein, but there's a third alternative, in my opinion. Yes, first of all, everything is a miracle, but we need to leave a little room for those rare instances that occur every once in a while when something so extraordinary happens that there seems to be no other explanation that God simply intervened. I'll tell you another story. Alcides Moreno. Dr. Craig Brian Larson tells the Moreno story. Listen to this. He says that by every law of physics and medicine, Moreno should be dead. Moreno was a window washer on the towering skyscrapers high over Manhattan. He rode platforms with his brother Edgar high in the sky to wash the windows of those skyscrapers. You've seen those pictures of those people. From his perch, he could look down and see the pavement far below it where people look like ants. However, on December 7, 2007, catastrophe struck the Moreno family. As the two brothers worked on the 47th story of a high-rise, their platform collapsed and the Moreno brothers fell from the sky. As you might expect, Edgar died from the fall. However, Alcides survived. Now, if you're a believer in miracles, this would be one, said the doctor. Alcides didn't land on a passing airplane. You see those in the comedies even, or catch his shirt on a flagpole, or have anything else amazing happen like you see in the movies. He fell the entire 47 stories to the pavement below. Somehow he survived this 47-story fall. For 2 weeks, he clung to life by a thread. Then on Christmas Day of that year, he spoke and reached out to touch his nurse's face. 1 month later, the doctors were saying that he would probably walk again someday. That a miracle? How do you explain it? 700 years before the coming of Christ, the prophet Isaiah was describing the age of the Messiah, and this is what he said. That when the Christ comes, there will be eyes of the blind be opened, the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then will the lame leap like the deer, and the mute tongue shout for joy. Isaiah 35. Two of those prophecies were fulfilled in today's lesson from the Gospel of Mark. Mark tells us that Jesus left the vicinity of Tyre and went through Sidon, down to the Sea of Galilee, and to the region of Decapolis. There some people brought to him a man who was deaf and could hardly talk. And they begged Jesus to place his hand on him to heal him. What's interesting is that Jesus didn't heal this man the way people asked, the way he normally did, in fact. He didn't put his hand on the man. Rather, he took him aside, as Donna said a while ago, away from the crowd, and put his fingers in the man's ears, and then he spit and touched the man's tongue. Then he looked up to heaven with a deep sigh and said, "Be open." At this, the man's ears were open, his tongue was loosened, and he began to speak plainly. Miracle. Jesus commanded the man and those who were with him not to tell anyone about this miracle, however. But of course, the more he told them not to be silent, the more they told people. People were overwhelmed. He's done everything well, they said. He makes the deaf hear and the dumb mute speak. If you think about this, it makes sense that they were impressed. Medicine was very primitive in the New Testament times. That's one of the reasons life is so short, and it was very short. If you had a serious disease, where would you go? They didn't have hospitals. I simply don't realize how fortunate we are to have all the benefits of modern medicine. Sometimes we complain about what the doctors can't do. Never realize all the things that they do for us. And almost every day there are advances that we never hear of, such things as stem cell research. Have you heard that? Gene editing. And many other areas of medical knowledge that are revolutionizing the practice of medicine today. In fact, one expert says that the advances of medicine over the next two decades will be almost unimaginable. For example, if you have a liver failure in the near future, you won't go to an organ donor list to wait for a liver. It may be possible that a new replacement liver will be printed on a 3D printer in a medical laboratory, a liver designed especially just for you. Think of that. That day is getting very close, according to people in the field. And how about a replacement of heart or lungs? We're not there yet, but hang in there, they say. The time's getting very close, according to the experts. People in Jesus' time could only pray for the miracles that you and I experience every day. Almost take for granted. People who lived in the biblical times couldn't even imagine such advances as we take for granted today. So when they discovered a man who could cause the blind to see, the deaf to hear, the mute to speak, and the lame to walk, they were absolutely astounded. The question is, does he still perform such miracles today, this man called Jesus? Does he still do that? Some very devout Christians say no. They say the day of miracles is past. Both Martin Luther and John Calvin, the two great leaders of the Protestant Reformation, were in this camp. By the way, John Calvin, you know that? John Calvin? He was the founder of this church, Presbyterian Church. He didn't think it did. But many other Christians believe this as well. They cite Jesus' words that his miracles were signs of affirming that he was who he said he was. That makes sense too. We don't have to have witness to his miracles powers to believe he's the Son of God, do we? We have our Bible, at least we have them, do we read them? That's good. Which contain numerous eyewitness reports from people who were there when he healed the blind, the deaf, the lame, and the mute. We don't need miracles to know that Christ is who he says he was. We know that from our own lives, or at least we should. And we have the wonders of modern medicine to aid us. People are already living nearly twice as long on the average as they did in biblical time. Nearly twice as long today. Now, that doesn't mean we will not still be in the mercy of forces that can destroy us. That doesn't mean that many of us will not destroy ourselves. one of the saddest things I can imagine. In fact, did you see the news report last winter where the average lifespan of adults in this country actually shrunk in 2017? Shrunk the first time. Why? Anybody want to guess why? Opioids. Of course, there are those lives lost to gun violence. Just because many people are living longer, that doesn't mean that it would no longer need to pray for God to intervene in our lives or the lives of those we love. But it does mean that we'll not be as vulnerable to the sickness and death as people were when Jesus was teaching and healing. It's just changed, that's all. And it gives us the opportunity to rethink the ways in which God answers prayers. There are two things we need to recognize about miracle healing. First of all, we need to get rid of the idea that more faith you have, the more likely it is you will be experiencing a miracle. That has just been devastating. I've seen it so many times in my ministry, it just, I don't know what to tell you. People think if you just have enough faith, you'll be okay. Recently, a radio pastor gave this response. I heard the question of faith and healing. The pastor was a wise old pastor, grandfatherly gentleman who was calm, with a serene voice that kind of melts your fears away. A lady on a broadcast who was obviously crying said, "Pastor, I was born blind and I've been blind all my life. I don't mind being blind, but I have some well-meaning friends who tell me that if I had more faith, I could be healed." Now, this was evidently causing this woman a great deal of distress. Not only was she blind, but some of her so-called friends were telling her it was her fault. If she just had enough faith, God would heal her. The radio pastor asked her something that I felt was not only humorous, it was right on target. This is what he said. "Tell me," he asked the blind lady, "do you carry one of those white canes?" "Well, yes, I do," she replied. Then said the radio pastor, "The next time someone says that to you, hit them over the head with a cane, and then say, if you had more faith, that wouldn't hurt." I did get you over there. Healing is not proportional to our faith. Too many fine Christians have had guilt piled upon their already suffering bodies because people have told them that if they had more faith, they would be healed, which is not true. Most of us are mature enough to realize that prayer isn't a heavenly slot machine in which you pour our prayers and automatically the answer we desire comes falling out. Just enough prayers, or the right kind of prayers, or from the right people. If we could just get that there, then everything's going to be okay. If we could do that, there'd be no need for faith. Faith is a belief in the unseen. Now we see through a glass darkly, the Bible says. But that doesn't mean that our prayers are unheard or unanswered. Never give up on prayer. Never give up on prayer. God uses all kinds of means to offer help to his people, just as Jesus used different means to help to heal his people. Sometimes it's the prayer of a pastor or a congregation or a family or a friend. Sometimes it's just the presence of loved ones in times of crisis that turns the tide. Now, I've got a story. You got this on? Excuse me. Oh, she's really got it on. Sorry about that. Is that too loud for you? Pretty loud. Is better? Okay. 7 years ago, this month, I told you about my granddaughter, Maddie, who, well, let me put it this way. She had a stroke, horrible, massive stroke. They had to take out just, all kinds of deep. It is horrible. Okay, let me tell you how this all transpired. Somebody may remember this. I told you this, part of it is. She was going to college. She's only been there like 2 or 3 weeks or something like that, I think. And it was on a weekend, on a Sunday morning. And
I think she was talking to her parents, as a matter of fact, on the phone, and she says, something's wrong. And then I guess the line went dead, and there was nobody there. Generally, there was nobody there at college at that time, in the dorms. But there was one girl that had stayed for some reason right across the hall. Maddie opened the door, and as she opened the door, she started having seizures, and she fell, and the girl across the hall called security. And security came, and they, no big deal, just one of those drunken college kids, and they just kind of passed it off, he's drunk, or she had maybe some drugs or something. So they just messed around there for a while, and finally this girl says she don't drink and she don't take drugs, there's something going on here. So they finally called the ambulance, and they took Maddie to the hospital in Springfield, the ICU. Brought into where they come in, anyways, ICU. And now, that's where she is, okay? Now let me back up a little bit. And for years, the hospital, St. John's Hospital at Springfield, have been trying to get this doctor, who's one of the best doctors in the world for strokes, to come and put on a seminar and to update everybody, all the doctors on it. Best in the world. They had trouble getting him. For years they've been trying to get him, Well, this past year, that year, he had a cancellation. That's okay. There you go. You got it. Don't worry about it. That's the technology of our age. Anyway, they've been trying to get him to come and just wasn't able to, and they had a cancellation. And so he called to St. John's and told them that they had a cancellation and had some dates, and so they set up the date and time for him to come to St. John's to put on the seminar. It was on a Monday. Okay, just on a Sunday. It was on Monday. They made up the time and everything, and this guy got away early for some reason, and got to Springfield, and he'd never done this before, but he thought, well, he'd go by the hospital and just kind of see how that, well, we got another one. They got it yet.
I mean, I better go answer this. It's my sister.
Okay, you go right ahead. It's a wonderful story, though. I'll tell you sometime. You make it? Be careful, man. So, he decided to go by the hospital and just kind of see what was going on, what it was, and all that kind of stuff. And as he instead of going right to the motel, he went to the hospital. And instead of driving on by, he decided to go inside, just to see how things were going. And so as he went inside, he passed the IC unit. Now, Maddie was in there. All the doctors and everybody there still thought it was something else, but they didn't have any idea what it was. This guy walked by this unit, looked in there, and said, she's having a stroke. Best in the world guy. Took over her care. Saved her life. Saved her life. Now, she was there for weeks. I don't know how many was you, man? Was it? But she was she went to therapy for months. Yeah, she was in ICU for several weeks, and then she went to therapy, and she was there, and she had seizures that were ongoing, and it was just horrible. They didn't think she was gonna make it for a long time. She almost did. Everybody was praying for her. You were praying for her. I, my family, the school, after the volleyball game, all the kids went out in the middle of the floor, and the teachers and everything, and they had prayer for Maddie. She was really special. She is a really special person. Okay, she was there for several weeks, and she was there for several months in the therapy, and then she was home with therapy and all that kind of stuff. She was home for months. And then they got the medicine and everything, and all that, and it was just horrible. She was sensitive to sight and sound, and it was horrible. Months go by. Gradually, she began to recoup. One of the things that I remember, first thing I thought was, it's still going to be Maddie. It's still going to be her. She's going to be there. And it was. She was the same old gal. Same old man. And as she was progressing, remember one thing that just struck me. She went in one day, she was a beautiful pianist. Beautiful pianist. She went in one day, and she hadn't played the piano, it was kind of her therapy. And one day she went in and sat down and started playing. And one of the things she said was, I remember this. And the more she remembered, the more she was able to play. And that's the way it was from then on. It was just a matter of, little by little, she began remembering. She all this stuff that she been so easy for her before now was tough. I mean, she tired out so quick, and it was just. Well, anyway, we go on this for years. About 7 years ago, it happened. A few years ago, she got up to where she went back to college. Just one class for a short period of time. And then got more. And while she was at college, guess what? She met a boy. I don't know how that ever happened, but it did. Of course, you look at her and you see how it happened. She's beautiful. Was unbearable. That's what he was, yeah. He was doing studies for this type of stroke thing happening. And they got to know one another, and you know how that goes. And they got close, and they fell in love, and they were absolutely perfect. If anybody would, they are. And go along, and I guess this is the rest of the story. The rest of the story is that now 7 years later, she's got her one degree already in place. She's got another degree that she'll be finishing up the first part of the year. She was hired at Chaddock about 3 or 4 weeks ago on a full-time basis to do what she's studying to do and always dreamed of doing, was working with those kinds of kids. Okay? That's where she's done 7 years. She's gotten back to college, got degrees. She's working at Chaddock, something you always wanted to do. And the rest of the story is yesterday, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I am married. Yeah. My oldest son was going to do, the father and all this kind of stuff, said a little something, and they gave Mark the microphone. And you know my son Mark, but he could pull anything off. He could only say, I think the only 2 words he ever got out was 7 years ago. He had a whole list of stuff he wanted, that was it, he was done. 7 years ago, and here's where she is. Good job, all of that, because, now, is that a miracle? It's a miracle to me. It always will be.
Don't ever forget. Believe in these miracles, for they're true. Hymn number 478.